All right, let's talk about the AC method for factoring. Now, the AC method I found is a method that a lot of students can have some difficulty with, and it also just happens to be a method you're going to encounter a lot. So being comfortable with factoring with the AC method is going to be super important. So when should you factor using this method? Well, you use the AC method when you have a trinomial, and you should be familiar with this form, ax squared plus bx plus c. It's used for factoring a trinomial where this term up front isn't 1. Like in our first example here, it's 6. The way you're used to normally factoring trinomials is most likely sum product method, which is AM method, but that only works when the number appears 1, when you don't really see a number there. So I found there are two main versions of doing the AC method, two main techniques. So rather than talking about them both in one video, I've decided to split them up. The reason why is 90% of the people watching, 95%, don't need to know both versions. You just want to know whichever is easiest, whichever is simplest, whichever one will get you the answer the quickest. That method always happens to be whatever you really learned in class. So what I suggest doing is after I do the first example, if the method is just something you don't recognize, it's like my teacher did not do this, go to another video that I have linked in the description. That will go to the other version of the AC method. All right? So let's just start out with this example. So my example reads out 6x squared plus 7x plus 2. All right? So how do we go about factoring this? First, we need to find a very specific number. And this number is kind of the reason this is called the AC method. The number is going to be our A term multiplied with our C term. Okay? So that's our front leading coefficient and our tail end coefficient multiplied together. And that happens to be 12. So that's step one. Multiply A and C together, write that to the side. Okay? And now you want to find two numbers, and this should sound familiar, that multiply to this number, your AC number, and add to your B. Okay? So I need two numbers that multiply to 12, add to 7. Eventually you'd find those two numbers are positive 3 and positive 4. So what you're going to need to do is split up your 7x. You're going to need to write it as a 3x plus 4x, right? Because that should equal 7x. So this is all going to still equal the same thing. And I'll put 3x here and 4x here. And then add to 2. Now, here is where you're going to do a technique you should be familiar with, factor by grouping. So if you're unfamiliar with factor by grouping, I have a separate video on that. Go take a look at that, and then you'll be able to do this version of the AC method. Okay? So what do you do in factor by grouping? Well, you're going to factor two groups. You're going to just kind of split this up, and then do the GCF of each individual group. So the GCF of 6x squared plus 3x, well, that should just be 3. And what do you have left on the inside? 3x comes on the outside. And what's left on the inside is 2x plus 1. And what comes out of here? Well, that looks like a positive 2. So a positive 2 comes out, and what's left on the inside is a 2x plus 1. Okay? Now, like in factor by grouping, these two match, so we can take it out because it is a common factor between these two. So the 2x plus 1 comes out of the equation, and what you're left with on the inside is 3x plus 2. And this would be your final answer. So if you're not familiar with this method, go to the description. I have linked version 1, a separate video I made for the other method. But if this looks like the thing you're doing in class, or if this is the method you want to use, let's go to some example problems. Just one more thing I wanted to mention, I forgot to put in the beginning. Your very first step should be to do GCF method, with your original equation. The reason I didn't mention it here is because there actually is no GCF. But the first thing you should do with either version of the AC method is always take out the greatest common factor and then do AC method with whatever's left in the parentheses. Okay? So now let's go to our first example. So here we have 7x squared minus 25x minus 12. Just to note, what I've done for both videos is I've made the questions, the examples that I go through, the exact same ones, and that's just for anybody wanting to directly compare both methods. Okay, so what's our first step? GCF method. We look through and there is no common term between all of them. So step 2, we actually find our specific number that we need for the AC method by multiplying our A term and our C term together. 7 times negative 12 gets us negative 84. Now, here's what we need to do. We need to find two numbers that multiply to negative 84 and add to negative 25. If you have trouble with this, there is a method to use a graphing calculator to kind of like guess the number. But on paper, you could also do a chart, right? So let's chart out different numbers that could add to negative, or that multiply to negative 84, see what they add to. All right, so 2 I know is divisible, and 2 and negative 42 multiply to negative 84. And that definitely doesn't add to negative 25. So let's try 3. 3 and negative 28. That definitely adds to negative 25. So 3 and negative 28 are our two numbers. So let's split these up. Okay. Let's see. So I'm going to write 7x to the second. I'll do plus 3 plus 3x minus 28x minus 12. Now, a question you might have at this point is, how do we know what number to put up front and what number to put in back? And the answer is, it doesn't matter, which is a super nice answer. It really doesn't matter because you're going to get the same answer no matter what. Okay? And if you want, you should be doing this, hopefully, along with me. Try reversing the numbers and factor by grouping that way. You'll get the exact same answer as me. All right? So our next step is to actually do factor by grouping. So this 7x plus 3, plus 3x, what's the common factor? Just x. So that's our first group. We take out an x, and what's left on the inside? 7x plus 3. Now here, negative 28 and negative 12. What is our common factor there? It looks like it's going to be 4, or in this case, negative 4. The reason we're taking out a negative 4 is because in order to get this next term that's left to match, I need the signs inside to be positive. So negative 4 divided by negative 28 is a positive 7x, right? If I took out a positive 4, I would have got a negative 7x. It wouldn't have matched. Similarly, this negative 12 divided by negative 4 is a positive 3. And finally, we actually do the GCF. We take out this common term of 7x plus 3. And what are we left with? An x minus 4. And now we have our final answer. All right? So let's move on to the next example. All right, so this next example says 42 x to the second plus 51 x minus 18. So we have larger numbers, and all that means is it's a problem that looks more complicated, but really we're doing the same steps, so it should be as easy as any other problem. Okay? So what do we do first? First we have to do the actual GCF method. we need to take out a common term, and there is one in this particular expression. The common term in all of these looks like it would be a 3. So we take out a 3. So 3 goes on the outside. And what's left on the inside? It looks like 14x to the second plus 17x minus 6. Okay? Now what we have to do is the AC method with whatever's left on the inside. We ignore this outside thing. So by ignoring the outside thing, I mean, it's going to still be there at the end, but we don't need to do anything more with it. This 3 is just going to forever stay outside the parentheses. So let's do our AC. Let's find our AC term. So AC is going to be equal to 14 times negative 6. And that also in this case happens to equal negative 84. And once again, we have to find two numbers, in this case multiplying to negative 84, adding to positive 17. So we could try out different numbers. I know 6 goes into here, so let me try negative 6 and positive 14, which don't add to positive 17. Negative 4 and positive 21, that will get me positive 17. Okay? So I'll put 3 up there, and then I still have the 14x squared. And I'll do the minus 4 up front and the plus 21 up back. So minus 4x plus 21x minus 6. So now let's factor. Let's do our factor by grouping. So I'm going to group the first terms together and the second terms together. What's the GCF for 14x squared minus 4x? That's just going to be 2x, it looks like. So that 3, and then 2x is on the outside. 14x squared divided by 2x should be 7x. And the, let's see, that should be minus 2. Okay. Now, the GCF for these terms looks like it's going to be 3, a positive 3. So we take out a plus 3, and what's left on the inside is a positive 7x and a negative 2, right? Those two match, which is kind of what we're looking for. The last step is to take out this as though it were a common factor. And what are we left with? 3 times 7x minus 2, and then 2x plus 3. And that's our final answer. Let's move on to the next problem. So here we have 8x squared minus 12x minus 8. So at this point, hopefully this is seeming repetitive. Repetitive is good. It means you're kind of getting used to the actual steps. What is step 1? GCF. Let's take out a common term. In this case, 4 is common in all of these. It's the greatest common term. So taking out a 4, bringing it to the outside, I now have 2x squared minus 3x minus 2. All right, what's next? Well, we actually have to find our AC term. We'll do that off to the side here. AC is going to be equal to 2 times negative 2, which is negative 4. Now I have to find two numbers. They have to multiply to negative 4 and add to negative 3. Those numbers I think are a lot easier to find than some of our previous stuff. It looks like those are going to be negative 4 and positive 1, right? Minus 4 times plus 1 is a negative 4, and minus 4 plus 1 is negative 3. So let's split this up. And what we do is split up our negative 3 into our two components. And like I said, it doesn't matter which one goes first, so I'll just arbitrarily say negative 4 goes here, and a positive 1x, which I'll just make x goes there. And then minus 2 gets tacked on the end. What's our last step? Well, we got to actually do the factor by grouping part now, right? I'll group my first two things together. So 4, and what's the GCF between 2x squared and 4x? Well, that should just be 2x. And what's left in here? X. What's left here? Minus 4. Oh, not minus 4, sorry. Minus 2. Just like that. And here, this is actually already in. There's nothing to actually factor out. So it's going to be plus a x minus 2. And there's technically a 1 here on the outside. The very last step now says, all right, this 4 stays out. This x minus 2 gets factored over here. And this 2x is left along with this positive 1. And that's our final answer. All right, so I got one more example for you. So let's check that out. All right, so like with the other ones, I suggest you try this one out yourself. Pause the video and see how easy it is. I'm sure you guys are total experts by now. Okay, so what's the first step? GCF method. We take out whatever common terms in here. In this case, between 10, 25, and 125, it's going to be 5. So I take out a 5, and what's left is 2x squared minus 5x minus 25. Our next step, finding the AC term. So AC is 2 times negative 25. Our AC is minus 50. Now we have to find two numbers, multiplies to minus 50, adds to negative 5. And after some work, you can find out those numbers are negative 10 and positive 5. Negative 10 times positive 5, negative 50. Negative 10 plus positive 5, negative 5. So this 5 stays on the outside. My two numbers are negative 10 and positive 5, right? So this 2x squared stays there. And I rewrite this middle term using my two component terms. Okay, so minus 10, I'll just put it up front, with the plus 5x being put in the back. And that's all subtracted by 25. What's the next step? Factor by grouping. So let's group these. I'll group my first two terms together and my second two terms together. So this 5 remains on the outside, just hanging out. It's already done. It did its job. Now, what's the GCF between 2x squared and negative 10x? It's going to be 2x. So 2x comes out, and I'm left on the inside with an x minus, what's 10x divided by 2x? Just negative 5 left in there. Similarly, 5x minus 25, a positive 5 can come out. And what's left on the inside is an x minus 5. And we have two matching terms, right? So we're all good. All we have to do is our final step of rewriting this. So 5 still on the outside, just chilling. An x minus 5 goes up front, and what's left? Well, 2x plus 5. Okay? So that covers the AC method for factoring. Hopefully, this is getting a lot easier to see the method you need to do. So just let's go over the steps one more time. What's the first thing you do? GCF. Make sure to factor out any common terms in your original expression. What do you do after that? Well, you have to find the AC term, the AC number, right? Hence the name of this method. And that's done by multiplying the A and C component together. And after that, you have to find two numbers that multiply to your AC number and add to your middle number. What is your B term? If we're looking at the general formula for a trinomial, right, for a 3-term polynomial. Once you find that, once you find those like component terms, right, the numbers that multiply to this, add to this, you rewrite your b term in a way where it uses your 2 component terms. And that's typically done by replacing this with this plus this. Next, you do factor by grouping. And after you're done with factor by grouping, you should have your final answer. So I'm sure at this point you guys are pretty much experts, but if you have any questions, throw it down in the comments.